Hi there guys, my name's Ed and we're going to talk today about some updates to the Veeam Easy Connect module. I think that's the best way of putting it. So if you've happened to have watched one of my videos before, you probably have used this module now because it makes life a lot easier when it comes to using Veeam APIs. However, I thought it was a little bit limited in its scope. It only worked with Enterprise Manager and VBR's newer API. And I realized that it was, to be honest, um, most of the APIs that Veeam uses now for things like Azure, AWS, GCP, everything is using OAuth now. So pretty much the same rules apply to what I was doing with the Veeam API or VBR API. So I thought I'd expand this module out a bit. And it does mean some breaking changes to the way it was working in the previous videos. So if you have watched those videos, it's not working for you, it's probably the reason why. So just bear with me. So if you just walk down the list of changes, basically it now works with all the APIs, but some of this still needs testing. So the multi-factor authentication needs to be tested still. I haven't tried the standard logins with the AWS and Azure pieces yet, but they should work because they are working quite well with VBR. But if anyone's watching this and would like to try it out and test it and see if it's working and let me know, please let me know. And remember, this is a open project, so if you want to contribute to become a collaborator, or if you wish to um, simply just add an issue, or even just do a pull and do a pull request to make changes or suggested changes, I'm happy to have a look at that. It'd be great. I think more people on this would be better. I am also working on SSO for this. I've currently got that in a pre-commit at the moment. I just need to kind of I had to step away from it for a bit, so I'm gonna look at it probably every weekend or maybe next week to see if I can get that working. I also need to get a AWS instance up and running with SSO working as well, so that's no little thing in itself. Um, the only external packages still is requests. So a lot of this is just wrapping the requests library and just doing standard requests, the calls. It's just making the getting of the authorization tokens and creating the headers for future requests after you've done the initial login. Just that little bit easier, so you can get on with playing with the data or using the data that you can get out of the Veeam API. Um, it works in a similar way to the way it did previously, in that you import the module, like you can see there, import easy from Easy Connect, import Veeam Easy Connect. The bit that's changed is that when you instantiate the object, you now give it a username and password, and you can also specify whether you want to use secure SSL, or if you want to use insecure as in self-signed certificates. I would suggest that if you are using this with a web-based API such as Office 365, no, not Office 365, Azure and AWS, and GCP, that you use a proper certificate with that implementation. It's a little bit better when it's in on your private network or in your lab, like I have. So I just thought I'd throw that in there. So but so the next stage is that you take the instantiated object and you first call the type of API that you want to use. So that is essentially going to call up the correct API version, set all the right headers, set the right endpoint, because each of the endpoints is slightly different in terms of port, and each of the API types is different depending on which API that you're accessing. And I'm just going to mention there is a new settings JSON file here which gets pulled into the module, which has all that information, such as the API version, the endpoint that we need to send the data, and as you can see, it's slightly different between each of the APIs. More similar than others. Office 365 is very different, for example. Um, so going back, I would also mention that the multi-factor authentication version of Office 365 is not going to be included in this because it is quite a limited API, because it's meant to be used for tenant access. So it's not planned for use. You can just have to use the standard VBO server endpoint instead of using two-factor authentication or VBO. I have actually got it working, but it's very limited. So, okay, so we instantiate the object, so you create do the login, and then there's a bunch of convenience methods as well I've added in here. So there's methods to get the access token or to create the headers for you. So the idea is that it works kind of around the way you want to use this. Um, so if you just want to get the access token, so you can edit your own header, you can go get access token. If you want it to say, yeah, to create the whole header for you, and then you can use that in your next request. That you can do that as well. And I'll show the method in a minute. Um, and multi-factor authentication, I just mentioned this here, is slightly different. The way that works is that you do the initial login, and then you can call a method that says get the MFA token. I will send the token back to you, which you can then use to authenticate, and then you get the code, which you can then add into this method called MFA login. And once you've done that, then you should be able to carry on like normal. So you'll be able to do requests and be able to save the headers and the token file. There are some new convenience methods as well in terms of get, put, and post. Again, these just wrapping standard the requests type calls. But I thought because you're using the module, why would you want to have to re-import requests and all the other stuff to do that? It's already in the object anyway, or in the let's go call it object in the object anyway. So it just makes it a little bit easier if you're doing something that's in line. If you're doing a authentication and you want to send the request straight away for a kind of one-time use type of script, then this would be a big good use for a case. Or if you like me like using Python notebooks, Juniper notebooks, sorry, then this is great for that as well because I can walk down each of the code blocks and I can then send things. I don't have to keep on and I don't have to re-import that stuff like I said before. Here's some of the convenience methods. So you have the get request header, and you can also save the header out as well if you wish to. Save it out to a JSON file so you can then re-import it later. You've got the access token I said showed before, but you also have an option here where you can go get access token with bearer. So that will just append the bearer string to the beginning of the token. And there's also a bunch of examples in the examples folder here. I haven't done tons of them yet. I'm probably going to add some more. So this is, as I was mentioning, about the inline version of the doing a API call. So it gets the address, username, and password, instantiates the object with the username and password, and I'm using false here. And then we're doing a login to the VPR server. This URL is going to get all my repositories. It then does a get request to that URL, and then I'm saving out the data to a JSON file. So if this is something you need to do, just want to get the JSON file, just the repository information or whatever job information out of the API in a kind of single script, that's how you do it. And that would just save you a load of lines of code using this module. So I'm going to now flip over to my VS Code. So I'm just going to hide this. And we'll go over here. So I was messing around with this earlier. So I'll just quickly show the actual code itself. So we've got Veeam API connects here. It's getting quite a hefty file, and like down the bottom here's the changes I've just made, which is going to include the SSO login. So that will, once I get this figured out, I will add this as an option. But again, this is something I haven't finished yet. This is the API settings JSON file that I showed before, and here's a Juniper notebook that I'm using to do my testing. So I'm going to import the module. I'm going to, this is my VBR server stuff, so I'm going to do that. Okay, hopefully I get the password right this time. And login, and I get an OK. That means that it's a good login, and then I can then get my access token like so. Boom. And if I want to get my repository data, I set the address, and then I am going to pick the request and I get an OK again. And you can see I'm just getting the keys here because it's quite a big bit of data coming back from the API, so I didn't want to display it here because it doesn't display very well. And I can then save the request header, and that's now saved the request header to a JSON file. So I can go over here and you can see JSON, my request header file there. And if I want to save the response from the API itself, the repo data, so actually I'm going to update that typo there, and I'm going to just update that with .json because I forgot to do that earlier. And again, we get the that is now called repo data.json. I'm going to do a shift control F to format, and then we can now see all that great information from the API. Back over to here. So I'm going to do the same thing with VBO. So Veeam backup for Office 365. Okay, instantiate a new object, do a login, and get my access token. Great. And just for completeness, we're going to do the same to Enterprise Manager and get the login, and then I can don't need to get the access token again because I think it was shown above. And there's just a little note here: if you do call it with the bearer method on the Enterprise Manager, it doesn't append the bearer at the beginning because it does check to see if it's the basic authentication, which obviously we don't need to append with the bearer token, the bearer string at the beginning. And that is basically it. Like I said, this is a project. Feel free to let me know if you want to contribute, or if you have any ideas to this you would add, and also any feedback in general. Do you think this is useful? Because personally, I think that Python is probably one of the better languages out there to do this kind of work, especially with the use of the Juniper notebooks. And this is what this channel's always about: is that I find that using Juniper notebooks a very useful way to explore the APIs in general, but particularly the Veeam APIs, because it's always a little bit difficult to figure out exactly the structure of an API before you can start using it. And I think that's one of the biggest problems with using APIs in general is understanding how to deal with the data and how to extract the bits of data you need, and then what to do with that data moving forwards. I'm hoping that this module gets over that kind of initial hump of the authentication piece, so then you get into the actual interesting stuff of actually working with the data that comes out of the APIs and then doing something interesting with it. Anyway, so I'm going to leave that there about on the module. I am planning to do the next video in the series. I know it's been, I don't know, 6 months or something, which will go through how to create a report, a HTML report using this. So keep an eye out. I will be posting hopefully soon. Thanks.